That's 12 o'clock now.
Well, it is certain that Sir Charles' death is due to heart fail. After all investigation, the court has decided that Sir Charles' death was fully natural.
Now I need to get help from a detective.
No, sir, we can't help you.
Now there is only one option, Sherlock Holmes.
Watson, do you remember that a man named Dr. Mortimer had came to me yesterday?
Yes, he had came to examine your skull.
Yes, and he was ironed. It is Dr. Mortimer himself whose footsteps we heard right now. He might be coming to us. Come in, Dr. Mortimer. Have a seat. I presume, sir, that it was not merely for the purpose of examining my skull that you have done me the honor to call here last night and again today. But first let me introduce my friend to you. This is my friend, Dr. Watson.
Glad to meet you, sir. Mr. Holmes, I need your help in a very difficult and confusing matter. I'll read a manuscript to you before beginning my story. This manuscript is written by Sir Charles Baskerville. This family paper was committed to my care by Sir Charles Baskerville, whose sudden and tragic death some 3 months ago created so much excitement in Devonshire. I may say that I was his personal friend as well as his medical attendant. He was a strong-minded man, sir, shrewd, practical, and as unimaginative as I am myself. Yet he took this document very seriously, and his mind was prepared for just such an end as did eventually overtake him. This is a statement of a certain legend which runs in the Baskerville family. I'll read it to you. Sir Charles says, "Of the origin of the Hound of the Baskervilles there have been many statements, yet as I come in a direct line from Hugo Baskerville, and as I had the story from my father, who also had it from his, I have set it down with all belief."
This manor of Baskervilles was held by Hugo of that name, nor can it be gainsaid that he was the most wild, profane, and godless man.
It chanced that this Hugo came to love if, indeed, so dark a passion may be known under so bright a name, the daughter of a young man who held lands near the Baskerville estate. But the young maiden, being discreet and of good repute, would ever avoid him, for she feared his evil name. So it came to pass that one Michaelmas this Hugo, with 5 or 6 of his idle and wicked companions, stole down upon the farm and carried off the maiden. Father and brothers being from home, as he well knew.
You will stay here till you agree to marry me.
The maiden was placed in an upper chamber, while Hugo and his friends sat down to a long carouse, as was their nightly custom. Now, the poor lass upstairs was like to have her wits turned at the singing and shouting and terrible oaths which came up to her from below, for they say that the words used by Hugo Baskerville, when he was in wine, were such as might blast the man who said them. At last in the stress of her fear she did that which might have daunted the bravest or most active man, for by the aid of the growth of ivy which covered, and still covers, the south wall she came down from under the eaves, and so homeward across the moor, there being 3 leagues betwixt the Hall and her father's farm. It chanced that some little time later Hugo left his guests to carry food and drink, with other worse things, perchance, to his captive, and so found the cage empty, and the bird escaped. Then, as it would seem, he became as one that hath a devil, for, rushing down the stairs into the dining hall, he sprang upon the great table, flagons and trenchers flying before him, and he cried aloud before all the compa and why that he would that very night render his body and soul to the powers of evil, if he might but overtake the wench. And while the revellers stood aghast at the fury of the man, one more wicked, or, it may be, more drunken than the rest, cried out that they should put the hounds upon her. Whereat Hugo ran from the house, crying to his grooms that they should saddle his mare and unkennel the pack, and giving the hounds a handkerchief of the maids, he swung them to the line, and so off full cry, in the moonlight, over the moor. But at length some sense came back to their crazed minds, and the whole of them, 13 in number, took horse and started in pursuit. The moon shone clear above them, and they rode swiftly abreast, taking that course which the maid must needs have taken if she were to reach her own home. They had gone a mile or two when they passed one of the night shepherds upon the moorlands, and they cried to him to know if he had seen the hunt. And the man, as the story goes, was so crazed with fear that he could scarce speak, but at last he said that he had indeed seen the unhappy maiden, with the hounds upon her track. But I have seen more than that, said he, for Hugo Baskerville passed me upon his black mare, and there ran mute behind him such a hound of hell as God forbid should ever be at my heels. So the drunken squires cursed the shepherd and rode onward. But soon their skins turned cold, for there came a galloping across the moor, and the black mare, dabbled with white froth, went past with trailing bridle and empty saddle. Then the revelers rode close together, for a great fear was on them, but they still followed over the moor, though each, had he been alone, would have been right glad to have turned his horse's head. Riding slowly in this fashion, they came at last upon the hounds. These, though known for their valor and their breed, were whimpering in a cluster at the head of a deep dip, or goyle, as we call it, upon the moor, some slinking away and some, with starting hackles and staring eyes, gazing down the narrow valley before them. The company had come to a halt, more sober men, as you may guess, than when they started. The most of them would by no means advance, but 3 of them, the boldest, or it may be the most drunken, rode forward down the goyle. Now, it opened into a broad space in which stood 2 of those great stones, and there, in the center lay the unhappy maid, where she had fallen, dead, of fear and of fatigue. But it was not the sight of her body, nor yet was it that of the body of Hugo Baskerville, lying near her, which raised the hair upon the head. Daredevil roisterers, but it was that, standing over Hugo, and plucking at his throat, there stood a foul thing, a great black beast, shaped like a hound, yet larger than any hound that ever mortal eye has rested upon. And even as they looked, the thing tore the throat out of Hugo Baskerville, on which, as it turned its blazing eyes and dripping jaws upon them, the 3 shrieked with fear, and rode for dear life, still screaming, across the moor. One, it is said, died that very night of what he had seen, and the other 2 were but broken men for the rest of their days. Such is the tale, my sons, of the coming of the hound, which is said to have plagued the family so sorely ever since. If I have set it down, it is because that which is clearly known hath less terror than that which is but hinted at and guessed. Nor can it be denied that many of the family have been unhappy in their deaths, which have been sudden, bloody, and mysterious. Yet may we shelter ourselves in the infinite goodness of Providence, which would not forever punish the innocent beyond that 3rd or 4th generation which is threatened in Holy Writ. To that Providence, my sons, I hereby commend you, and I counsel you by way of caution, to forbear from crossing the moor in those dark hours when the powers of evil are exalted. So, in short, the ancestor of Sir Charles, Hugo Baskerville, was a cruel man. He came to love with a maiden on the farm, but the maiden ignored him because she was afraid of his cruelty. So one day, Hugo, with his companions, stole down on the farm and bought the maiden to Baskerville Hall. He said to her that she will be locked till she agreed to marry him. After he left, the maiden jumped out of the window and ran away. When Hugo came to know it, he sent a pack of hounds on her trail and followed them himself. After some time, his wicked companions went to search for him and found maiden and Hugo's dead body, and a giant black beast with blazing eyes and dripping jaws, tearing the throat of Hugo Baskerville. That hound is now called as the Hound of the Baskervilles. The hound has been haunting the family till now. It is known that several mysterious deaths have occurred in the Baskerville family tree, and it is generally believed that the hound is behind them.
For watching the next story of the Hound of Baskerville animated series, watch the episode The Mystery on the 8th of June 2022.